Whatever you do, don't open the door that appears at 3:17 in the morning. Those are the last words my father left me, recorded on a cassette tape I did not find until 20 years after my sister disappeared. At the time, I thought he had been warning me about grief, memory, or one of the other invisible things that had hollowed him out before he died. I was wrong. He meant an actual door. My name is Mason Hale, and for most of my adult life, I inspected buildings for a living. I knew how to read stress fractures, identify shifting foundations, and tell the difference between natural settling and structural failure. That was why the city sent me to Bellwether Apartments on a cold Thursday night in November. The building had stood on the east side of Cleveland since 1928, 12 stories of stained brick, narrow windows, and rusted fire escapes that groaned whenever the wind came off Lake Erie. It was scheduled for demolition in 3 weeks. Before that could happen, someone needed to confirm the building was empty and safe enough for the demolition crew to enter. I volunteered before I saw the address. Bellwether was where my father had worked as the night manager. It was also where my 12-year-old sister, Ava, vanished on December 4th, 2006. The police searched every apartment, storage room, utility shaft, and rooftop access point. They checked security footage, questioned every tenant, and dragged the river 2 miles away. They found nothing. My father claimed Ava had left the building through the east stairwell. I claimed I had been asleep. Neither statement was true. I arrived shortly after midnight carrying a flashlight, a laser measuring tool, a hard hat, and a set of old master keys the city had recovered from my father's estate. The lobby smelled like wet plaster and dust. Plastic sheets covered the mailboxes. A brass chandelier hung above the entrance, dark and motionless, while rain tapped softly against the glass doors behind me. The power had been disconnected months earlier, but a red emergency light glowed above the elevators. I told myself it was running on a backup battery. Then the elevator on the left opened by itself. There was no light. Inside, I stood there for several seconds, listening. Nothing moved beyond the doors. I took the stairs. My assignment was simple. Start on the top floor, work downward, photograph every major crack, and confirm that no one had entered the condemned property. By 2:40 a.m., I had inspected 8 floors and found nothing stranger than raccoon tracks in a laundry room. The building creaked constantly, but old buildings always creaked. Pipes settled, wood contracted, wind pressed against loose window frames. Every sound had a reason. That belief had kept me calm for years. It began to fail on the 3rd floor. According to the original blueprints, the east hallway measured 64 feet from the elevator to the stairwell. I measured it twice. The laser returned 72 feet. I checked the blueprint again, then paced the distance manually. The hall appeared normal, with apartment 316 on the left, a sealed laundry room on the right, and the east stairwell at the far end. There was no extra space, no recessed wall, and no architectural explanation for the missing 8 feet. I blamed the equipment and tested the laser against the width of the corridor. Perfect reading. I measured the hallway a 3rd time. 64 feet. I laughed, but the sound came out too loud in the empty building. That was when I noticed the clock above the elevator. It was an old round wall clock with a cloudy plastic face. The building had no power, yet the second hand was moving. The time was 3:11. I took a photograph. On my phone screen, the clock read 2:52. I looked back up. 3:12. The second hand continued its steady sweep. Somewhere behind the laundry room wall, a child laughed. It was soft, brief, and familiar enough to make my chest tighten. "Hello," I called. The laughter stopped. I crossed the hallway and pressed my ear against the wall. Cold plaster touched my skin. At first, I heard only the distant tick of the clock. Then came 3 quiet knocks from the other side. I stepped back. The laundry room had no adjoining space. Its rear wall bordered the stairwell shaft. I knew because I had studied the plans on the drive over. 3 more knocks sounded, lower this time, close to the floor. My flashlight flickered. The wall clock clicked to 3:15. I should have left. Instead, I unlocked the laundry room. The door resisted, then opened with a long scrape across the tile. Inside were 6 washing machines, 3 dryers, a deep utility sink, and a row of metal shelves. Dust covered everything except a narrow trail across the floor. It looked as though someone had walked from the far wall to the door in bare feet. The footprints were small, a child's. I followed them with a flashlight until they ended at a solid brick wall. My watch vibrated. 3:16. The clock in the hallway began ticking louder, each second echoing through the laundry room like a drop of water in a cave. I turned toward the exit. The hallway had changed. Between apartment 316 and the east stairwell stood a dark blue door that had not been there seconds earlier. Brass numbers on its surface read 317. The corridor around it seemed stretched, as though the building had quietly made room. My laser measuring tool slipped from my hand and clattered to the floor. The wall clock reached 3:17. Every sound in Bellwether Apartments stopped. The rain vanished. The wind vanished. Even the building's constant groaning fell silent. Then a lock clicked inside apartment 317. I stood frozen in the laundry room doorway as the brass knob turned slowly from the other side. The door opened 3 inches. Warm yellow light spilled across the dusty carpet. I smelled cinnamon oatmeal, the breakfast my father used to make when Ava and I were children. Somewhere inside, a radio played a weather report from December 2006. My mouth went dry. "Mason," a girl whispered. I knew the voice before she spoke again. "Mason, is that you?" I moved into the hall without deciding to. The gap widened. Beyond the blue door, I could see the apartment where my family had lived 20 years earlier. Our brown couch sat beneath the window. Ava's red backpack rested beside the kitchen table. A paper snowflake she had made at school hung from the ceiling. Nothing looked faded, abandoned, or false. It looked like I had stepped out for a few minutes and returned to the night everything went wrong. "Ava," I said. The apartment. Lights flickered. A shadow crossed the far hallway. Then my sister appeared at the end of it, wearing the gray sweatshirt and green pajama pants she had worn the night she vanished. She was still 12 years old. Her dark hair fell across her face. One hand rested on a closed bedroom door behind her. "You came back," she said. I could not breathe. I wanted to run to her, but something on the wall beside me caught my attention. 7 digital clocks were mounted in a vertical row. Every one displayed 3:17. Beneath them, red numbers appeared one by one. 420, 419. 418, a countdown. Ava looked toward the numbers, and fear changed her expression. "You have to come inside before it remembers you," she said. "What remembers me?" She did not answer. The apartment door opened another inch. From somewhere deeper inside, a man began humming the lullaby my father used to sing when we were young. Ava glanced over her shoulder. "Mason, please." I took one step toward the threshold. The cassette recorder inside my inspection bag clicked on by itself. Static hissed through the tiny speaker. Then my father's voice, older and exhausted, spoke from a tape I had never placed inside it. "If the room comes back," he said, "do not let it hear her full name." Ava lifted her face. Her eyes were fixed on me, but her voice came from directly behind my shoulder. "Mason Hale," she whispered. "This time, will you open the door?" I did not turn around. Ava was standing 20 feet in front of me, but her voice had come from directly behind my shoulder, warm enough that I could almost feel her breath against my neck. The countdown on the wall continued. 412, 411, 410. My father's warning crackled through the cassette recorder inside my bag. Do not let it hear her full name. I stepped across the threshold without saying another word. The blue door swung shut behind me, and the hallway outside Bellwether Apartments disappeared. The apartment smelled exactly as it had in December of 2006, cinnamon oatmeal, laundry detergent, and the pine candle my father lit every winter because he could never afford a real Christmas tree. A television murmured in the living room. Snow fell beyond the window, even though rain had been striking the building moments earlier. Ava remained at the far end of the hall, with one hand resting on the closed bedroom door. "You took too long," she said. Her lips matched the voice now. I wanted to run to her, but the moment I moved, every digital clock changed. 398. 397. What happens when it reaches 0? I asked. Ava glanced toward the ceiling. "It decides who stays." "What is this place?" "You already know." No, I do not. Her expression tightened. That is why it brought you back. She opened the bedroom door behind her and slipped inside. I followed, but the hallway stretched with every step. The brown carpet lengthened under my feet. Family photographs appeared along the walls, one after another. In the first, Ava and I stood beside Lake Erie when she was 6. In the next, she was 10, holding a science fair ribbon. In the third, she was older than I had ever known her, maybe 20, smiling beside a college dormitory. I stopped. That picture had never existed. Ava had vanished at 12. More photographs appeared. Ava at 25. Ava in a white graduation gown. Ava holding the keys to a small house. Then one final picture showed her standing alone in front of Bellwether Apartments, exactly as she looked now, still 12 years old. Someone had written a date beneath it. December 4th, 2026. The current year. The countdown reached 340. Ava, I called, careful not to say her last name. Where did you go? The bedroom. Her answer came from 3 different doors at once. I reached the first and pulled it open. Instead of a bedroom, I found the laundry room from the 3rd floor. The same machine stood under the same weak yellow light, but every washing machine was running. Dark water turned behind the glass doors. A child's red sock floated inside one of them. I closed the door. Behind the second was the lobby, empty except for my father sitting at the front desk. He looked the way he had before grief bent his shoulders and turned his hair gray. He stared down at a newspaper while snow pressed against the lobby. Windows. Dad, I whispered. He raised his head. His face was blurred, as if I were looking at him through wet glass. You should have opened the laundry room, he said. I shut the door before he could stand. The 3rd door led to Ava's bedroom. She sat on the edge of her narrow bed, holding a small cassette recorder in both hands. Glow-in-the-dark stars covered the ceiling. Her old stuffed rabbit leaned against the pillow. Everything was exactly where it had been on the night she disappeared, including the cracked snow globe I had blamed her for breaking. Dad left this for you, she said. She held out the recorder. A strip of masking tape was fixed across the front. Written in my father's blocky handwriting were the words for Mason, if the room comes back. I stepped closer, but Ava pulled it away. You have to promise you will listen outside. Why can I not listen here? Because it listens with you. The countdown read 281. Did Dad know where you were? I asked. Ava lowered her eyes. He knew where the door went. Then why did he tell the police you left through the east stairwell? Because he was afraid they would open it. Did he come in here after you? Many times. Why did he leave you? Ava looked toward the closet. The door stood slightly open. Darkness filled the narrow gap. He thought I was not me. A soft humming drifted from inside the closet. My father's lullaby. I took the cassette recorder from her hands. Her fingers felt cold but solid. For one impossible second, I believed I had found her. I believed 20 years could be erased by walking through one blue door. Then Ava looked up and said, You still have a scar on your left knee. I froze. What? From when you fell off your bike behind Grandma's house. The scar was on my right knee. Ava had been there when I fell. She had laughed until she cried, then ran inside for a bandage. You're not her, I said. The room became silent. Ava tilted her head. I remember everything she remembered. Not everything. Enough for you. The closet door opened another inch. A taller shadow stood inside. Mason, my father's voice said, bring her home. The countdown dropped to 211. I backed into the hallway with the recorder clutched to my chest. Ava remained on the bed. Her face did not change, but her voice followed me from the walls. You came because you wanted forgiveness. Every door in the hall opened at once. Behind one, Ava was crying in the laundry room. Behind another, my father was calling the police. Behind a third, I saw myself at 13, standing outside the laundry room with one hand on the lock. I turned away before the memory could finish. The apartment was no longer recreating the past. It was searching through me. The countdown reached 170. I ran toward the blue door, but the living room had doubled in size. The couch seemed farther away with every step. The television flickered through home videos of Ava, each one ending with her staring directly into the camera and asking why I had left her. I kept moving. The front door waited beyond the kitchen. From the hallway behind me came the sound of bare feet running across carpet. Mason, wait. I did not look back. I am scared. I reached the door. The brass knob would not turn. The clocks changed to 98. I pulled harder. Nothing. The cassette recorder clicked in my hand. My father's voice emerged through a wash of static. "The door will not open for guilt," he said. "It opens for truth." The footsteps stopped behind me. Ava whispered, "Tell me what happened." I closed my eyes. "I heard you knocking from the laundry room." The knob shifted beneath my hand, and I did not open the door. The lock released. Ava began to cry. It sounded real enough to break me, but I pulled the door open and stepped into the third-floor hallway. The blue door slammed behind me. I fell against the opposite wall as the countdown reached 0. For 1 second, the number 317 remained on the door. Then the blue paint faded, the brass knob vanished, and the wall became solid plaster. The building's sounds returned all at once. Rain struck the windows. Pipes groaned. The elevator bell rang somewhere below. My watch read 3:24 in the morning. Exactly 7 minutes had passed. I opened the cassette recorder with shaking hands. There was a tape inside. I pressed play. Static filled the hallway, followed by my father's voice. I knew it was him because the label said so, because the rhythm of his breathing felt familiar, because my chest tightened when he spoke. But I could no longer remember what his voice had sounded like. "Mason," the recording said, "if you brought anything out, then the room has already taken something in return. Listen carefully. It does not keep people. It keeps the versions of them we cannot let go. Every time you enter, it learns another memory. Every time you leave, you lose one. And when you have nothing left to remember, it will give you back exactly who you came looking for." By sunrise, I had listened to my father's tape 14 times, and each time his voice felt less like a memory and more like a stranger speaking through a wall. I knew the man on the recording had raised me. I knew he had worked the night shift at Bellwether Apartments for nearly 30 years. I knew he drank coffee from a chipped Cleveland Browns mug and tapped the steering wheel whenever he was nervous. But the sound of his voice no longer belonged to any of those memories. The room had taken it from me as payment for the cassette recorder I carried out. I drove to the city building department just after 7 and found Rachel Mercer in the records office, already wearing her safety vest over a gray sweater. Rachel and I had worked together for 6 years. She trusted measurements, photographs, and stamped documents. She did not trust stories about doors that appeared inside condemned buildings. At least, she did not until I placed the cassette recorder on her desk and showed her the photograph from the third-floor hallway. In the image, the clock above the elevator read 3:17. Between apartment 316 and the east stairwell stood a dark blue door marked 317. Rachel stared at it for several seconds, then opened the original blueprint beside her. "There is no apartment there," she said. "I know. There is not even enough space for one. There was last night." She looked at me. "You said the hallway measured 8 feet longer. Only for a few minutes. And you went inside?" I nodded. Rachel pressed play on the recorder. My father's warning filled the quiet office. She listened without interrupting, but when the tape ended, she did not dismiss it. Instead, she asked the question I had been avoiding. "What did the room take?" His voice. "You still have the recording." "That is not what I mean." I tried to remember my father saying my name when I was a child. I could picture his face and the movement of his mouth, but every memory was silent. I know what he sounded like only while the tape is playing. Rachel closed the recorder. Then we find out who else entered that room. We spent the morning digging through property records, police reports, tenant lists, fire inspections, and newspaper archives. Bellwether had housed hundreds of people since 1928, and most records were incomplete, but a pattern began to emerge. In 1974, a maintenance worker named Harold Vance disappeared during a night shift. In 1981, a tenant named Sandra Kelly vanished from the third floor. In 1989, a 9-year-old boy named Marcus Reed was reported missing after his mother heard him talking to someone inside a locked closet. 5 more disappearances followed, including Ava's. 8 people in total. Each had last been seen inside Bellwether between 3:17 and 3:24 in the morning. The disturbing part was not that their cases remained unsolved. The disturbing part was how difficult it was to prove they had ever existed. Harold Vance appeared in one payroll ledger, but nowhere else. Sandra Kelly's name had been erased from the lease records, leaving only a blank line between apartment numbers. Marcus Reed appeared in a school attendance book, but every class photograph from that year showed an empty space where he should have stood. When Rachel called the surviving relatives listed in the files, most denied knowing the missing person. Sandra's younger brother insisted he had been an only child. Marcus's mother had died years earlier, but her obituary mentioned 2 daughters and no son. Only one name remained connected to all 8 disappearances: Evelyn Price. She had lived in apartment 318 from 1959 until 2010 and had given statements in 6 of the cases. Rachel found her current address at an assisted living community 12 miles west of the city. Evelyn was 86, sharp-eyed, and seated beside a window overlooking a frozen courtyard when we arrived. The moment I introduced myself, she reached for the call button beside her chair. "I told your father never to send you here," she said. "My father is dead." Her hand stopped. For the first time, fear broke through her expression. "Then the 7 minutes are gone." Rachel pulled a chair closer. "Mrs. Price, what happens at Bellwether?" Evelyn looked at the cassette recorder in my hand. "You brought something out?" "Yes." "What did it take?" "My memory of my father's voice." She nodded as though I had confirmed an old diagnosis. "The room always charges less the first time. It wants you to believe you can afford to return. You have seen it?" I asked. "Twice. I never stepped inside. Why did it appear to you?" Evelyn turned toward the window. "Because when I was 17, my little brother locked himself in our father's workshop during a storm. He called for me. I heard him, but I was angry with him, so I walked away. By the time I came back, the room was empty and the back door was open. We never found him." Her reflection in the glass seemed older than the woman sitting before us. Bellwether did not create my guilt. It only learned how to speak with it. Rachel opened a folder containing the 8 missing person cases. Why do their families not remember them? Because remembering is what keeps the room connected to the world. It takes a little each time someone enters. A voice, a birthday, a face. Eventually, it takes the person's place in everyone else's life. "But you remember," I said. "I never crossed the threshold. The room could show me my brother, but it could not take my memory of him." Evelyn looked directly at me. "You crossed." "I had to. That is what everyone says." She asked Rachel to close the door to her room. When it clicked shut, Evelyn lowered her voice. "The door does not appear to people who merely lost someone. It appears to people who left someone behind a door." My stomach tightened. Rachel glanced at me, but I stared at the floor. Evelyn continued. "Your father understood that too late. He thought Bellwether chose Ava because she was a child. It chose your family because one of you refused to open a door." The room seemed suddenly too warm. I heard Ava knocking from 20 years ago, 3 soft strikes from inside the laundry room. I had buried that sound so deeply that I had almost convinced myself it never happened. "I heard her," I said. Rachel did not speak. The night she vanished, I heard Ava calling from the laundry room. We had argued earlier. She had broken my portable radio and blamed me for something at school. I was angry. When she knocked, I told her to stop bothering me. Evelyn's eyes did not leave mine. "Did you open the door?" "No," the word barely came out. I walked away. When I came back, the door was unlocked and she was gone. For 20 years, I had called it confusion, shock, and a bad memory. Saying it aloud gave it shape. The clock on Evelyn's wall stopped. The second hand trembled over the number 3. Rachel stood. "It is not even 3 in the morning." Evelyn looked toward the closed door. It does not need to wait when someone gives it the truth. 3 knocks sounded from the hallway. Slow, careful. A girl's voice followed. "Mason, open the door." I stepped back so quickly that my chair struck the wall. Rachel reached for the handle, but Evelyn shouted for her to stop. The voice outside changed. It became my father's, though I could recognize it only because the cassette recorder began playing the same voice at the exact same time. "The first visit lasts 7 minutes," both voices said together. "The second visit teaches at your memories." The hallway lights went out beneath the door. Evelyn gripped my wrist with surprising strength. And the third time it appears, it will not disappear at 3:24. Another knock shook the frame. It will remain open until someone stays behind. The knocking stopped the moment Evelyn told us the third door would remain open, but the silence that followed felt worse because something was still standing in the hallway, listening to us breathe. Rachel kept one hand near the handle while I held the cassette recorder against my chest. My father's voice continued for several seconds after the voice outside had gone quiet. Then the tape slowed until every word stretched into a low mechanical groan. Evelyn leaned toward me and whispered, "Do not let it make you curious." The lights beneath the door flickered back on. A shadow moved away down the hall, too tall and narrow to belong to any resident or nurse. Rachel waited until it disappeared before opening the door. The hallway was empty. A television played softly at the nurse's station. Two attendants were laughing over paper cups of coffee as though nothing had happened. When we asked whether anyone had knocked, neither woman knew what we were talking about. Evelyn refused to say another word until we promised not to return to Bellwether. I made the promise because it was the only way she would release my wrist. I broke it before sunset. Rachel met me outside the building department at 11 that night with 2 flashlights, a portable video camera, a coil of rope, and the original blueprint sealed inside a plastic tube. She had also brought an analog stopwatch. "Phones change time inside the building," she said. "This will not connect to anything. You do not have to come. You already crossed the threshold once. If it takes another memory, you might not know what you lost." We entered Bellwether through the loading entrance shortly after midnight. The storm had moved east, leaving the city under a cold, clear sky, but the air inside the building smelled damp. We climbed to the 3rd floor and positioned the camera across from the blank wall where the blue door had appeared. Rachel measured the corridor. 64 feet. She marked the floor with chalk every 8 feet, then stretched the rope from the elevator to the stairwell. It fit exactly. At 2:58, the clock above the elevator began ticking. At 3:05, the rope tightened without either of us touching it. At 3:11, the chalk marks nearest the stairwell slid apart as if the floor were stretching beneath them. By 3:16, the corridor measured 72 feet. Rachel stared at the laser reading, all skepticism gone from her face. "There is space now," she whispered. "Do not. Look away." The clock reached 3:17. The dark blue door appeared between apartment 316 and the stairwell without movement or sound. 1 second there was plaster. The next there was painted wood, a brass knob, and the number 317. Rachel pressed the stopwatch. 7 minutes began counting down. The door opened before either of us touched it. Warm yellow light filled the hall. I saw my childhood apartment exactly as before, with the brown couch, the paper snowflake, and Ava's red backpack beside the kitchen table. Rachel saw something else. She stepped closer and whispered, "That is St. Catherine's." "What?" "The hospital where my mother died." She moved toward the threshold. I caught her arm. "You are not seeing the apartment? There is a hospital bed inside. She is sitting up." Rachel's voice became small. She never sat up that last night. I looked through the doorway and saw Ava standing at the end of the familiar hall. Rachel saw her mother in a place that did not exist for me. The room had split itself between us. "We stay together," I said. Rachel nodded, but her eyes never left whatever waited beyond the door. We crossed the threshold at the same time. The air changed around us. Beneath my shoes was brown carpet. Beneath Rachel's were white hospital tiles. I could hear a radio playing a weather report from 2006. She heard the slow electronic pulse of a heart monitor. The walls overlapped, flickering between family photographs and pale curtains. At the far end of the hall, Ava raised one hand. Beside her, from Rachel's view, an unseen woman called softly, "Rachel, sweetheart, I am awake." Rachel took a step away from me. "That is her voice. It is using what you remember. She said exactly that when I was 9. That does not make it real." A side door appeared in the wall to Rachel's right. I saw only a narrow closet, but she stared as if it opened into another world. The heart monitor quickened. "She is asking me to come closer." Rachel reached for the handle. I pulled her back. The stopwatch read 5 minutes and 40 seconds. Evelyn said every person sees a different room. I reminded her. It wants you separated. Rachel's eyes filled with tears, but she released the handle. The door opened by itself. I saw darkness and empty shelves. Rachel saw her mother lying beneath a hospital blanket, one hand extended. Please, the woman said. You left before I woke up. Rachel moved again. I stepped between her and the doorway. Your mother is not there. You do not know that. I know what this place does. The woman inside began coughing softly. Rachel flinched. She was alone when she died. That is why the room chose this memory. The countdown on the wall appeared beside us. 290 seconds. Ava remained at the end of my hallway, watching. Mason, she said, do not stop her. She deserves another chance. No one gets another chance here. You came for one. The hospital door widened. Rachel's mother called again, weaker now. Rachel tried to step around me, and I grabbed both her shoulders. Listen to me, Rachel Mercer. That is not your mother. The room shuddered at her full name. Every clock stopped. Every sound vanished. Rachel froze. I realized what I had done. The rule was not only about Ava. My father had warned me not to let the room hear a full name, and I had just given it Rachel's. The hospital door slammed shut. The apartment lights went dark. For 1 second, there was nothing. Then dozens of voices began whispering from inside the walls. Some were children. Some were old. Some sounded like people I had never met. Every voice repeated my name. Mason Hale. Mason Hale. Mason Hale. Rachel gripped my sleeve. It knows you already. It knew me before we came. No, she whispered. Listen. The voices were not merely calling me. They were practicing me. One spoke with my anger. Another used my childhood laugh. Another repeated the confession I had made in Evelyn's room. I heard her knocking, and I did not open the door. The walls pulsed with the sentence. The room had not only heard the truth. It had learned how guilt sounded inside me. The countdown resumed at 180 seconds. At the end of the hallway, Ava stepped forward. She looked 12 years old, exactly as she had the night she disappeared. Her face was pale with fear. Her hands trembled. It is learning faster because you brought someone new, she said. Rachel aimed her flashlight at Ava. The beam passed across the wall behind her, and that was when I saw the shadow. Ava's body cast the outline of a grown man. Broad shoulders, long arms, a head bent slightly to one side. The figure moved half a second after she did. Who is behind you? I asked. Ava looked over her shoulder. Nothing stood there. There is no one. Your shadow. She glanced down. The shape on the wall raised one hand, while Ava kept both arms at her sides. Rachel pulled me backward. Mason, that is not her. The man-shaped shadow placed a finger against its lips. Ava smiled, but her eyes remained frightened. You finally brought me a door, she said. The stopwatch showed 60 seconds. Behind us, the blue entrance vanished, leaving only a wall. Then my father's voice came from inside Rachel's hospital room. You said her full name? He whispered. Now the room knows which one of you it wants to keep. The wall where the blue door had been felt warm beneath my palm, as if something on the other side were breathing against it. Rachel's stopwatch showed 58 seconds. My father's voice came again from the hospital room behind us. It knows which one of you it wants to keep. Rachel turned toward the voice, but I caught her wrist. Do not answer him. That is not your father, she said. I know. The words hurt because I no longer remember enough of his voice to be certain. At the end of the hallway, Ava remained still while the shadow behind her moved on its own. It separated from her feet and pointed toward Rachel. Every whisper inside the apartment changed. Rachel Mercer, they said. Her name passed through the walls like wind through an empty church. Rachel covered her ears. 43 seconds remained. There has to be another exit, she said. The room always gives one. How do you know? Because it wants us to choose. A door appeared beside the kitchen table. I recognized it immediately. It was the laundry room door from the night Ava disappeared. 3 knocks came from the other side. Then 12-year-old Ava cried, Mason, please open it. The Ava in the hallway did not move her lips. A second door formed across from it. white with a narrow hospital window. A woman's hand pressed against the glass. Rachel stared at it. "That is my mother's room." My father's voice came from both doors. "One of you must open what you left closed." The stopwatch reached 20 seconds. Rachel stepped toward the hospital. I stepped toward the laundry room. Then I noticed every clock still displayed 3:17. The room was not counting down to release us. It was counting down to consent. "Stop," I said. "Do not open either door." "Then how do we get out?" "We do not give it the choice it wants." The shadow behind Ava tilted its head. 10 seconds. 9. 8. I pulled the cassette recorder from my bag and pressed play. Static filled the room. My father's recorded voice began with words I had not heard before. "Mason, if you are hearing this inside the room, then I failed to keep the third door closed." The stopwatch froze at 5 seconds. Ava's shadow recoiled. "There are only 2 doors the room wants you to see," the tape continued. "One is guilt. The other is hope. The third is memory, and it cannot open that one without help." The apartment shook. "I opened the first door in 2006 because I heard your mother calling from inside Bellwether. My mother had died when Ava was 6. I remember the funeral and my father standing beside the grave with both hands in his coat pockets. The room promised I could speak to her again," the tape said. "It asked for one memory strong enough to build her face. I gave it the night Ava was born." Ava closed her eyes. The man-shaped shadow pressed both hands against the wall. It learned Ava from me. It wore her voice because she was the clearest thing I had left. My father had not discovered the room after Ava vanished. He had opened it first. That night, Ava followed me to the laundry room. She saw the door. She heard your mother calling. I told her to wait outside, but the room used my voice to bring her in. Rachel looked at me. "Your father caused it." The cassette clicked and resumed. I closed the door because I thought the thing inside was pretending to be her. By the time I understood, Ava had become a lock. She was not only trapped there, she was holding something back. The false Ava opened her eyes. Her shadow stepped away from the wall. It had my father's height and posture, but no face. For 20 years, I returned every night I could, the tape said. I kept the room limited to 7 minutes. I used the building's electrical system and every memory it had not taken from me. When I died, the limit died with me. The faceless figure moved closer. "What happens if Bellwether is demolished?" Rachel asked. My father answered from the tape as if he had heard her. "Do not destroy the building. The room is anchored to the missing space between the walls. If those walls come down, it will no longer need Bellwether." The demolition was scheduled in 3 weeks. I had signed the preliminary clearance myself. The room had not brought me back only because of Ava. It needed me to approve its release. The figure stopped a few feet away. When it spoke, it used my father's voice, Ava's voice, and my own at the same time. "Open one door, Mason." The laundry room shook with Ava's crying. Rachel's mother called from the hospital. The final seconds of tape hissed through the speaker. "The room can copy what you remember," my father said, "but it cannot create what you refuse to give it. Close your eyes. Hold on to nothing. When the countdown ends, do not choose anyone." The faceless figure rushed toward us. I shut my eyes. Rachel did the same. Ava screamed. Rachel's mother begged. My father ordered me to look at him. I let every voice pass through me without answering. The stopwatch clicked from 5 to 0. The floor vanished. I fell onto the third-floor carpet outside apartment 316 with Rachel beside me. The blue door was gone. The hallway measured 64 feet again. Dawn showed through the stairwell window. Rachel checked the video camera. The recording showed us entering a solid wall and disappearing. At 3:24, we fell backward out of the same plaster. Between those moments, the camera captured one image, my father standing in the hallway, staring into the lens. In his hands was a demolition notice bearing my signature. Across the bottom, someone had written, 3 weeks until the walls open. The third time the blue door appeared, 3 versions of my sister were waiting on the other side. Rachel and I had spent 2 nights trying to delay Bellwether's demolition, but the contractor moved the date forward after new cracks appeared in the foundation. We had 11 days. Evelyn Price had vanished from the assisted living records. and her room had been repainted as if she had never existed. Rachel began writing down everything we knew, but each morning one sentence faded from the page. On the third night, only 7 words remained in my notebook. Do not let it decide who is real. We returned to Bellwether before 3 in the morning. Rachel carried the camera and analog stopwatch. A red cord connected our wrists, so the room could not separate us without our knowing. I carried my father's cassette recorder and an old photograph of Ava and me beside Lake Erie. At 3:17, the hallway stretched 8 feet. The dark blue door appeared, and it opened onto a circular room with 12 doors and pale walls. 3 girls stood in the center. The first was Ava at 12, wearing the gray sweatshirt and green pajama pant from the night she vanished. The second was a woman in her early 30s with Ava's eyes and the small scar beneath her chin, the age she should have been now. The third had Ava's height and hair, but no face. All 3 turned toward me. Mason, they said together. Rachel started the stopwatch. 7 minutes. The entrance slammed shut behind us. The child, Ava, stepped forward. You found me. Please take me home. The adult, Ava, shook her head. She is what the room remembers. I'm the one who survived here. The faceless Ava pointed toward the 12 doors. Voices came from behind them. A boy called for his mother. A woman begged someone to forgive her. My father repeated my name in a voice I could no longer remember. How do we know which one is real? Rachel asked. The adult, Ava, looked at her. You do not. That is the point. The child, Ava, began to cry. Ask me something only we know. The room has my memories, I said. It can answer anything I remember. Then ask what you forgot. The circular room changed. The floor became the laundry room tile from 2006. The 12 doors became washing machines, dark behind their round glass windows. 3 knocks sounded from the nearest machine. The child, Ava, whispered, You left me there. The adult, Ava, said, You were 13 and angry. You did not know what Dad had done. The faceless Ava used my own voice. Say the rest. I understood. The room knew that I heard Ava knocking and walked away. It did not know what happened before that because I had never told anyone. The stopwatch showed 4 minutes and 40 seconds. Before you disappeared, I locked the laundry room door from the outside, I said. Rachel turned toward me. You had broken my radio, and I wanted to scare you. I told you I would leave you there until Dad came back. Then I heard him in the lobby and ran because I thought he would punish me. When I returned, the door was open. Every machine stopped. The child, Ava, covered her ears. The adult, Ava, closed her eyes. The faceless figure stepped backward. What did you say to me through the door? I asked. The child answered first. I said I was sorry. The adult said, I begged you to open it. Both were wrong. Then a voice came from inside the wall behind me. I said I hated you. A narrow, hidden door appeared in the plaster. I opened it. Ava stood inside a space barely 3 feet deep. She was still 12, but her eyes carried 20 years of exhaustion. Small iron bells hung above her, trembling without sound. I also said I never wanted to see you again, she said. I spent 20 years wishing those had not been my last words. My knees weakened. Are you real? I'm what is left of me. Behind us, the 3 false versions began speaking together. She is the lock. Ava looked toward them. Dad opened the first door. Not you. He heard Mom calling and believed he could bring her back. I followed him because I knew the voice was wrong. When he closed the door, I stayed between the room and whatever was trying to leave. Rachel stepped closer. You have been holding here all this time? Ava nodded. The room is not the thing inside it. The room is the cage. The thing wearing our memories is the tenant. The adult, Ava, smiled. The child stopped crying. The faceless one grew taller. The stopwatch showed 2 minutes. I reached for my sister. Come with us. Ava moved away. If I cross that threshold, it crosses with me. There has to be another way. Dad searched until he died. He tried to replace me without giving the tenant a memory it could wear. He failed because he could not let us go. The 12 doors opened. Behind each stood someone we had lost. My mother, Rachel's mother, Evelyn's brother, my father. They all wore the same patient smile. The tenant spoke through every mouth. One of you can take her place. Rachel pulled the red cord tight. We leave now. I could not move. Ava looked exactly as she had on the last night I saw her, but she was no longer asking me to open the door. She was asking me to close it. The stopwatch reached 60 seconds. Mason, she said, if you want to save me, you have to stop trying to bring me home. The stopwatch showed 59 seconds when the tenant stepped forward wearing my father's face. I could not remember his voice anymore, but I remembered the way he stood when he was trying to hide fear, shoulders squared, hands held too still at his sides. The thing copied even that. You heard her, it said. Stop trying to bring her home. Ava remained inside the narrow space behind the hidden door, surrounded by the trembling iron bells. Rachel pulled the red cord between us. Mason, we have to move. The circular room had begun to contract. The 12 open doors drifted closer, carrying the faces of people we had lost. My mother smiled from one doorway. Rachel's mother reached toward her from another. Evelyn Price stood beside a boy I assumed was her brother. None of them blinked. The tenant raised my father's hand and pointed at the entrance behind us. The blue door had returned, but it was already narrowing. Take Ava through, it said. You stay for 7 minutes. That is all. Rachel shook her head. That is not the bargain. Every room needs someone inside when it closes. My father's face turned toward me. Your sister has paid for 20 years. You owe her 7 minutes. Ava gripped the frame of the hidden doorway. Do not listen. He does not need to listen, the tenant said. He only needs to remember. The room changed around us. Suddenly I was 13 again, standing outside the laundry room with my hand on the lock. Ava knocked from the other side. My father crossed the lobby below, calling my name. Shame filled the air like smoke. The tenant knew exactly where to press because I had given it the truth. The stopwatch showed 43 seconds. Rachel dragged me toward the blue door. The red cord tightened around my wrist. We leave together. Ava cannot leave while she is the anchor. Then we find another way. There is not another way. Ava looked at me. She did not cry. That made the decision harder. Mason, if you take my place, it will learn you completely. It already has most of me. Not enough to leave. The tenant smiled with my father's mouth. Not yet. 30 seconds. Rachel reached the blue door and forced it wider with both hands. Beyond it was the third-floor hallway at Bellwether, dim and empty. The wall clock still read 3:17. Come on, she shouted. Ava stepped out of the hidden space. The iron bells above her rang once. Every false face in the room turned toward us. The tenant's shape flickered. For a moment it wore Ava as a child, then Ava as an adult, then me. My own face stared back with a patient expression I had never worn. One stays, it said in my voice. 20 seconds. I pulled the photograph of Ava and me from my pocket. Lake Erie behind us. Summer sunlight. Her hair across her face. My arm around her shoulders. It was the strongest memory I still owned. The tenant looked at it and smiled. That will be enough. I finally understood my father's last instruction. The room could not create what I refused to give it. I tore the photograph in half. Ava gasped. The image faded before the pieces reached the floor. Mason, what are you doing? Rachel asked. I took the cassette recorder from my jacket. My father's tape was still inside. I pressed eject, pulled the ribbon free, and wound it around my hand until the recording became useless. The tenant's smile vanished. Stop. 10 seconds. I removed my wallet and threw my driver's license through one of the open doorways. My employee identification followed. Then my keys, my phone, my notebook, every object that connected my name to the life outside. The room trembled as if each loss weakened its grip. Mason, Ava said, you will erase yourself. That is the point. The tenant moved toward me, but the iron bells rang again and it stopped. 5 seconds. I pushed Ava toward Rachel. Rachel caught her with one arm while holding the blue door with the other. The hallway beyond had begun to change. My name disappeared from the inspection badge, clipped to Rachel's vest. The video camera screen flickered, and the file labeled Mason Hale became an empty folder. No, Rachel said. Do not do this. You have to take her. I will not leave you. You are not leaving me. You are remembering me. 1 second. I untied the red cord from my wrist. The instant it came free, the room expanded. The countdown vanished. The blue door stopped closing. The third visit had ended, but Evelyn had been right. It would remain open until someone stayed behind. I stepped backward into the narrow space where Ava had stood for 20 years. The iron bells lowered around me. The air became colder. Ava tried to return, but Rachel held her. "Mason," she called, "I do not forgive you." The word struck deeper than any plea. Then she added, "Because there is nothing to forgive." The tenant screamed without raising its voice. Every borrowed face opened its mouth, but only a low vibration passed through the room. I closed the hidden door between us. Darkness surrounded me. Through the thin wood, I heard Rachel pulling Ava toward the hallway. The tenant followed, wearing my father's shape. "You agreed to stay," it said. "Your memories belong to me now." "No, you entered for her." "Yes." "You confessed for her." "Yes." "You gave up your life for her." "No silence." I pressed both hands against the hidden door. I stayed because I chose to close it. The bells rang so loudly that the false apartment shattered into overlapping memories. I saw the laundry room, the hospital, the frozen courtyard outside Evelyn's window, and our childhood kitchen all at once. The tenant reached for me with my own face, but it could not hold the shape. I had destroyed the objects that confirmed who I was, and the room had already taken too many memories to rebuild me completely. My face blurred. My voice changed. My name vanished from the walls. Rachel stood in the third-floor hallway with Ava beside her, both pulling against the blue door as the building tried to erase the space between us. "Tell me something it does not know," Rachel shouted. I thought of the one truth I had never spoken aloud, not because I was ashamed, but because it had belonged only to me. The night Ava disappeared, I went back to the laundry room every year at 317 and waited for her knock. Ava stared at me. The tenant turned toward the walls, searching for a memory it had never been given. The blue door began to close. Rachel reached through the narrowing gap. I did not take her hand. "Remember the choice," I said, "not the guilt." Ava cried out my name as the door shut between us. The last thing I saw was my sister crossing into the hallway, no longer 12, her body changing with every step until she became the 32-year-old woman she should have been. Then the door sealed, the bells stopped, and the tenant spoke from the darkness behind me, using a voice that was almost mine. "You have made yourself impossible to copy," it whispered, "but you have also made yourself impossible to find." For the first 3 months after Bellwether Apartments was demolished, nobody remembered that I had ever existed. Rachel found my name missing from city payroll records, college transcripts, tax documents, hospital files, and every photograph she had taken during the investigation. My apartment had been rented to someone else for 2 years, according to the landlord. My father's estate listed no surviving son. Even Ava, who had returned to the world as a 32-year-old woman, could remember only that she once had a brother. She could not remember my face, my voice, or my name. Rachel remembered more, because part of her had remained inside the threshold when the blue door closed. She remembered the shape of my hand reaching toward the hallway. She remembered the red cord falling from my wrist. She remembered that someone had chosen to stay behind so Ava could leave. But whenever she tried to write my name, the letters faded before the ink dried. Bellwether came down on a gray morning in December. The demolition crew found no hidden apartment, no extra hallway, and no unexplained 8-foot gap between the walls. They found only old brick, rusted pipes, and a sealed foundation filled with black soil. Rachel stood across the street with Ava while the building folded into itself under clouds of dust. At exactly 3:17 in the afternoon, every machine stopped at once. The workers blamed an electrical failure. Rachel heard iron bells ringing beneath the ground. Ava heard someone knocking from inside the rubble. Neither of them answered. After the demolition, Rachel took Ava to a quiet apartment on the west side of Cleveland. Ava had no official explanation for where she had been for 20 years. Her fingerprints matched old-school records, and a childhood dental file confirmed her identity. But no one could explain why she had not aged while she was missing or why her body changed to 32 the moment she crossed the threshold. Doctors called it an error in the original records. Police called it an unusual case of long-term abduction. Ava called it survival. She rarely slept before dawn. Every night, she checked every door twice and covered the clocks before going to bed. Rachel visited almost daily, helping her learn the world she had missed. Smartphones frightened her at first. Online maps fascinated her. She spent hours reading about people she once knew, discovering marriages, careers, funerals, and children born while she remained 12 years old inside a room without seasons. The hardest absence was mine. Ava knew there should be someone beside her in childhood memories. She saw empty space in family photographs where an arm should have rested around her shoulders. She remembered laughing behind Grandma's house, but could not remember who had fallen from the bicycle. Sometimes she woke with tears on her face after dreaming of a boy standing outside a laundry room door. In the dream, he always returned. In the room, time did not pass the way it did outside. There was no sunrise, no winter, and no measurable distance. I stood in darkness beneath the iron bells while the tenants searched for a shape it could use. It tried my father first, but I had destroyed the tape that carried his voice. It tried Ava, but she was no longer inside to anchor the memory. It tried Rachel, Evelyn, my mother, and every missing person Bellwether had erased. Their faces appeared in the dark, spoke one sentence, and dissolved. Finally, it tried to become me. It built my height, my hands, and the outline of my face, but something was always wrong. The eyes belonged to my father. The smile belonged to Ava. The voice changed with every word. I had made myself incomplete, and that incompleteness became the lock. You cannot remain here forever, it told me. Neither can you. The walls are gone. The door is closed. It laughed with 100 borrowed voices. A door is not a place. It is an agreement. I did not understand until the first new door appeared. It opened somewhere far from Cleveland. Through a narrow crack, I saw a motel hallway lit by a red exit sign. A man stood outside, holding an ice bucket. He heard a woman calling from room 317 and moved toward the handle. I rang the iron bells before he touched it. The door vanished. After that, more openings came. A farmhouse in Iowa, a hospital corridor in Arizona, a college dormitory in Pennsylvania. Each door appeared before someone carrying guilt about a person they had left behind. The tenant had lost Bellwether, but it had learned how to search through memory itself. I stopped every door I could. Each time, the bells weakened. Each time, the darkness grew wider. 3 months after the demolition, Ava moved into a different apartment because the first building was scheduled for repairs. The new place was small but bright, with hardwood floors and a view of Lake Erie between 2 taller buildings. Rachel helped her unpack. At the bottom of an old cardboard box, Ava found half of a photograph. It showed a summer afternoon beside the lake. Ava stood on the right, smiling at someone who had been torn from the picture. On the back, one word remained in faded blue ink. Mason. The moment she read it aloud, every clock in the apartment changed to 3:17 in the morning. Rachel dropped the plate she was holding. A voicemail notification appeared on Ava's phone from a number with no digits. She pressed play. Static filled the room. Then my voice came through, weak and distant. Ava, I am still holding it here. Do not open anything that calls your name. She played the message twice. On the third attempt, my voice changed. Ava, I found a way home. Rachel took the phone from her. That is not the same recording. 3 knocks came from the hallway. They opened the apartment door and looked out. Between apartments 316 and 318 stood a dark blue door where a blank section of wall had been moments earlier. Brass numbers on its surface read 317. The building had no third floor. Ava stepped into the hallway. From behind the door came the sound of iron bells, followed by my voice. You remembered me, it said. That is all I needed. Rachel caught Ava's hand before she reached the knob. The voice inside changed, becoming softer, more desperate. Please, I cannot keep it closed much longer. Ava stared at the door, tears gathering in her eyes. Then she remembered something the tenant had never understood. Love was not the same as permission. Grief was not the same as surrender. She stepped back. My brother would never ask me to open it, she said. The knob stopped turning. The door trembled. From deep inside the darkness, I heard her words. For the first time in months, one of the iron bells above me rang without my touching it. Then another answered. Then all of them. The tenant recoiled as light appeared beneath the hidden door where I stood. Ava's memory of me had not freed it. She had given the lock a name. I pressed both hands against the wood while the false door in her hallway began to fade. Mason, she said again. This time, the room could not erase it. The brass numbers vanished. The blue paint dissolved into plaster. The hallway returned to normal. Rachel and Ava remained outside, safe. Inside the darkness, the tenant spoke with a voice that no longer sounded like anyone I loved. She found you. No, I said as the bells continued ringing. She remembered why I stayed. The room shuddered around me, and for one brief moment, a second doorway appeared behind the tenant. It did not open into Bellwether, a hospital, or any memory the room had stolen. It opened onto daylight. I could see Lake Erie beyond it, silver beneath a winter sky. Ava stood on the shore with the other half of the photograph in her hand. The doorway lasted less than a second, but it was enough to show me that the room had made one mistake. It had learned how to create doors from guilt. Ava had just created one from forgiveness. The tenant turned toward the light too late. I reached for the handle as the opening narrowed, and somewhere outside the room, at exactly 3:17 in the morning, Ava heard 3 knocks from the inside of her own front door. This time, she smiled before she opened it.